Once again, on behalf of DME Internal Complaints Committee, I welcome you all. I take this opportunity to welcome the dignitaries, Honorable Vice Chairman Sir, Honorable Director General Sir, respected directors DME and DTC, the deans, heads of departments, my fellow faculty members and staff members to this POSH workshop. We are gathered here today to gain greater awareness and to strengthen our resolve towards the prevention of sexual harassment at work. On that note, I have the privilege to introduce our resource person, Dr. Lipika Sharma, to all of you. Dr. Lipika Sharma is a professional with 20 years of experience spanning academics and practicing law at Supreme Court of India and Delhi High Court. She also has editorial experience owing to her role as a managing editor with Australian legal publisher Walter Kluwers. Ma'am has also been awarded the Best Woman Educator in Innovative Law Teaching at the National Education Excellence Awards 2017 in association with United Nations Global Compact. She has also given legal advice to IFRC and UNDP on disaster risk reduction. In her practice, Ma'am has represented various government ministries and departments and also worked as a legal advisor with the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Department of Ayush. Ma'am has been engaged recently as a POSH trainer for various corporates like Talent Edge and Field King. She has trained students, academicians, corporate employees, corporate leaders, and ICC members of various organizations and educational institutes. Currently, Dr. Lipika Sharma is engaged as an associate professor at Sharda University. So without further ado, I hand over the platform to you, ma'am. We can start with the session.
Thank you so much, Navya, for that elaborate introduction. Namaskar and very good afternoon to all the seniors, VCs, directors, all the respected deans and fellow faculty members and staff persons. I welcome everyone on my behalf to this first workshop. And before I start with what we are going to deliberate upon, I would like to assure everyone this is not going to be a normal webinar which we've been attending all through this pandemic. I'm sure everyone is aware about this topic, but I'm going to focus what law says, how we can protect our rights, and I'll try to keep a balance between what are the rights of male counterparts, because generally during training I've received a lot of questions saying this is a one-sided legislation, but the fact is not that this is a one-sided legislation protecting only female employees. It balances, the law balances very nicely the rights of the perpetrator and the aggrieved woman. So I'll just try and share my screen and start my presentation. Navya, please let me know if you are able to see the screen.
Yes, ma'am, it's visible.
And my voice is clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Great. And just give me a second. I'm trying to make it full screen.
Okay.
Can you see full screen now?
Yes.
Thank you so much. So today we are in a workshop in which we are going to deliberate upon what this prevention of sexual harassment at workplace is all about, why we need to talk about it at all, and why in India specifically, the jurisdiction we are living in, there is a need to provide protection which was duly protected by 2013 Act. So during my 1 hour workshop, what I'm going to discuss, why there is a need to talk about it, what is gender sensitivity, sensitization and equality, is there any international inputs, any international organization which have dealt with this area, and if yes, what is India's contribution to that, and how that those things if at all are applicable in India. Then I'm going to move on to discuss the landmark case in this area from which India started thinking about prevention of sexual harassment at workplace. That was Vishakha's judgment. So I'm going to discuss two judgments briefly, which made a big change in Indian jurisdiction with regard to law in this particular domain. Then I'll move on to discuss in detail what the law talks about, and most importantly, three things all of us, whether we are from educated background we are specialist, professional or not. As a normal citizen of this country, we should understand, as per the act, who is aggrieved woman, most important, what is sexual harassment as per the law, and what is a workplace. Without understanding three essential definitions, we will not be able to understand the ramifications of the law we are going to discuss. And then I'll move on to discuss what happens if an aggrieved woman would like to approach a concerned authority reporting the incident she has gone through. What is the process to be followed by internal complaint committee? What is the dictate of law? What are the rights and duties of the aggrieved woman and a person against whom allegations are made? What are the duties of managerial level people and member of ICC? And what if you don't comply with the norms of the act? What are the ramifications on the employer? Right. So I'm going to discuss everything and anything. And during this process, I'm also going to discuss what are the rights which are carved out by the legislation in favor of a other side, that is male counterpart, against whom allegations are made. Because in India, the legislation is drafted as per the data available in India, that is more of woman faces sexual harassment instead of same gender sexual harassment, which is prevalent in Western jurisdiction. Right. So with this brief, what I'm going to discuss, I'm just going to start with my presentation and discuss what all we need to talk about. Just give me a second. My screen has a lot of Zoom windows. I'm just moving them. Just give me a second. Right. So first and foremost, why we need to talk about it? Because being in a culture, the way we are groomed, we have a lot of stereotypes. There are 4 categories of stereotypes. One is physical. That is natural. God created. Are men and women biologically different. Then other 3 types of stereotypes created by us. Personality related. Man should look masculine, woman should look thin, delicate. There are certain qualities associated with women. Why I'm discussing what are the stereotypes, how it affects us at a workplace as well, how we treat each other. Then if you talk about stereotypes related to domestic, men go out, it's a general perspective. I'm not talking about metros and an area where most of the population is educated. More than half of the India is still in small towns and villages where this stereotype still prevails that men go out to earn, whereas women stay back at home. Hence, generally, it is converted at workplace that you are not, as a female, you are not good enough, competent enough to work the way men can. Then there are occupational related stereotypes, which are not obvious, but we are somehow mentally groomed with this. Boys should be engineers, pilots, sports person. And generally, girls should be teachers, nurses, something which is a half-day job. You come back early, look after children, and look after your home. These are prevailing stereotypes when we are talking about India. We need to move out of it because we must understand that in development of India, now the women folk are contributing equally. And that's why the need was thought about coming out with this kind of legislation. So we need to discuss equality in true terms. Another stereotype is gender inequality in eyes of society. Generally, when you visit a birthday, you have an invite for a birthday party. For boys, generally you carry Superman kind of toys, cars. For girls, you'll usually carry dolls, etc. Things which is stereotype. The girl will not play with a car. The boy will not be playing with a doll. These are some stereotypes which are still prevailing back of our mind. If not obvious, very obvious to us, but back of mind. Dowry almost gone from India, but that was one of the major stereotypes. Parents of a female are supposed to give dowry, never males. Then this is very recent, Beti Bachao. Our national government has to come up with this kind of campaign. Reason being, there was a need because of a lot of deaths in womb of girl child. So in this background, why I took all these things together, we need to be sensitive towards the other gender, which is generally till now also very frequently referred as weaker gender, females. We need to be empathetic towards how they feel, what are their needs when they come to workplace, and we need to sensitize. Being sensitive means when you understand others' difficulty and feeling, and sensitizing when you become legally aware, and sensitizing. This workshop is part of sensitization, making everyone aware what needs to be done and what needs to be changed in the present scenario. And then only will come down to gender equality. Now, most important, why we need to talk about gender sensitivity and gender sensitization is, it is one of the basic requirement for normal development of any individual. And as I've initially stressed, to build a strong society, man and woman both have to complement each other. If we keep on behaving, one is superior, another is inferior, it's not going to work. In this background, let's discuss what internationally has been done in this area. When we talk about sexual harassment of women at workplace, we can see, you can see on your screen, there is one international convention which came back way back in 1979, which is Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, and specifically talks about to ensure elimination of all acts of discrimination against women by person, organization, enterprises, etc. This was first leap forward internationally when first time ever women specific issues were discussed. And mind you, this convention talks about elimination of all form of discrimination, which includes sexual harassment at workplace. This was the first sole leap forward by United Nations to have this convention. Then if we move on to Indian jurisdiction, as I initially discussed, we need to understand what in Indian jurisdiction happens. If I talk about Indian jurisdiction, we have three important fundamental rights listed in Article 14, 15, and 21. 14 talks about equality before law. So when we are talking about equality before law, we are talking about equality in terms of employment as well, right? And when we are talking about Article 15, we are talking about prohibition of discrimination. Prohibition of discrimination on various grounds, and one of the main ground is sex, gender. On the basis of gender, you cannot discriminate. These are fundamental rights provided to all the citizens of this country. And Article 21, all of us are aware, right to life. No person shall be deprived of his life and personal liberty except according to the procedure established by law. So if we try to locate from where we have this prevention of sexual harassment legislation of 2013, the original international scenario is 1979 convention, and then we have fundamental rights as well, specifically focusing on 14 and 15. Now, when after discussing constitution, fundamental rights, let's come to when first time in India there was a lot of buzz around that there should be some written law in black and white discussing sexual harassment of women at workplace. That was thanks to Vikshakha. It was a Rajasthan case which reached up to Supreme Court level, and in which first time it was deliberated that even a social worker working in a village area who is gang raped have some rights because those villages are her workplace. This was the first case ever which came in 1997, which discussed in detail and gave the guidelines with regard to violation of rights of women at workplace, specifically discussing sexual harassment related. And the guidelines were so detailed and clearly mentioned, but despite these guidelines came in 1997, they were not implemented. And then after, in 2014 around, there came another case, Medha Kotwal Lele, in which it was brought to the notice of Supreme Court that despite these detailed guidelines, there is no legislation in place, and we need to have a legislation in this area. And that's how we reached a landmark of having the act, which is titled as Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace Prevention, Prohibition, Redressal Act 2013. Please understand, the act itself makes it very clear what its objective is. It says prevention, prohibition, and redressal. It's not only talking about redressal. What is first step at the managerial level, at the employee level, is to be taken. The name makes it very clear. Preventive steps to be taken. Try and prevent any event happening on your place of work of sexual harassment against any woman. That is the first duty obligation under this particular legislation. Then prohibition, and then comes redressal, that is reporting to ICC. Right. So this act came, the Medha Kotwal judgment came in October 2012, and the act was passed in 2013, within a year's time. Now we straight away, after this background, we straight away come to the most important portion, applicability of law. On whom this law is applicable. The ramification of applicability are huge. The law is applicable definitely to whole of India, and it applies to all the establishments, all organized, unorganized sectors, which I'm going to discuss in detail in next 1-2 slides. So the law is applicable to all the organization, is respective of the fact how many number of employees are there, what are the majority gender working there, what industry it is, what is the place of operation, that is which state, locality it is located, irrespective of the fact what is the legal status of the establishment, it is a NGO, a trust, registered under the any act in India or not, doesn't make any difference at all if it comes to the application of this particular law. Right. So broadly, if I put it in a very simple terms, the law is applicable to organized and unorganized sector. It is applicable in situations of interns and apprentices. If you are visiting any place just for a day, for 1 hour or 2 hours, and an incident occurs, you are protected as a woman under this act, and you can report that incident despite the fact you are an apprentice or intern visiting that place just for half a day. And the employee of that particular place does something which falls in the category of sexual harassment, you can report that to ICC of that concerned employer, and action will have to be taken. And the ramification on the other hand, when I'm saying unorganized sector, even a domestic help which comes to our homes daily is covered under the act. How, when I move my slides, I'm going to discuss. And because we being an educational institution, we must understand this law is replicated and adopted by UGC as well. We have a specific rule, regulation drafted by UGC, which you can see on your screen. And there is one book called Saksham, issued by UGC, which anyone can go on UGC website and download it, which is a handy book for all the educational institutions to take note how they should constitute compulsorily ICC bodies for sexual harassment related issues for students, employees, faculties, everyone. Now, the main focus, what we need to understand, as I started in the beginning, we need to understand these three definitions clearly. Who's the aggrieved woman? What is the workplace? And what is sexual harassment within the connotations of 2013 Act? So first and foremost, the most important thing, who's the aggrieved woman? Just give me a second, my screen hang. Yeah, so the aggrieved woman in relation to workplace, a woman of any age, whether employed or not, who alleges to have been subjected to any act of sexual harassment by the respondent. In relation to dwelling place, a woman of any age place or house, a woman of any age who is employed in that house at domestic place. Then you can see this depiction. Aggrieved woman includes working woman visiting a place, any student, domestic maids, workers, regular, temporary or ad hoc employees. You are on rolls, you are not on rolls. You are there for a 1 month contract, you are totally ad hoc employee or temporary, your recruitment is direct or through some agent, you are contractual, you are apprentice, trainee, you are working voluntarily without any payment, that also doesn't make any difference if you want to report the incidents to ICC. Right. This broad the ramifications are. This is what aggrieved woman is. So practically you think of any situation, even a laborer working at a construction site can report the issue. Even a female working as a sales girl, working in a parlor, you name it, any organized and unorganized sector, every woman is covered under the definition of aggrieved woman of 2013 Act. Then if we talk about what is workplace, any government, semi-government, PSU, corporation or institute, any private sector organization, foreign company having office in India, hospitals, nursing homes, any sports institute, complex.
But please keep your yourself on mute, please. All of you are requested to keep yourself on mute. Just a second, ma'am.
Yeah. Can I go on?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you. So any sports institute, complex or stadium, any place visited by employee arising out of or during employment, dwelling place or house, office parties. Beyond office hours, you have New Year party, you have project completion celebration party, any party where you are meeting your colleagues, your seniors, your juniors, any off-site visits, outbound trainings, client meetings, training sessions, travel for office purposes. So pick and drop. If someone misbehaves with you in your official pick and drop also vehicle, that still you can report if the incident falls within the category of sexual harassment. Any place where one visits in the course of employment. So the ramifications are so broad, you name it, and just only thing you need to establish, you are there at that workplace for some official purposes, and something happens which will fall in the category of sexual harassment as per the act which I am going to discuss now, you are considered aggrieved woman under the act. Now let's see what is this sexual harassment all about. It includes unwelcome sexually determined behavior, whether directly or by implication. Here I am going to discuss lot of behaviors which will fall under the category of directly under the sexual harassment or indirect behavior also. And then further I am going to discuss certain specific incidents for clarity purposes. So sexual harassment includes unwelcome sexually determined behavior, which includes physical contact and endeavors, a demand or request for sexual favors, sexually colored remarks, showing pornography, any other unwelcome physical, verbal or non-verbal conduct of sexual nature. Then if we move on and see, sexual harassment is also considered bullying or coercion of a sexual nature, or the unwelcome or inappropriate promise of rewards in exchange of for favors. In most modern legal contexts, sexual harassment is illegal. Sexual harassment is gross violation of women's right to equality and dignity. So this is the backbone. This last two sentences are backbone why we have and why there was a need felt at all to have a legislation defining everything in black and white. So there is no scope left for the employer to wash his hands off if the sexual harassment case is reported at the place of employment. So sexual harassment is a gross violation of women's right to equality, as we have discussed, given in the fundamental rights and dignity. These are the instances I have discussed which will fall in the category of sexual harassment, and there is a long list. I've tried to put few in place. Some examples of behavior that constitute sexual harassment at the workplace: making sexually suggestive remarks or innuendos, serious and repeated offensive remarks such as teasing relating to person's body or appearance, offensive comments and jokes, inappropriate questions, suggestions, remarks about the person's sex life, displaying sexist or other offensive pictures, posters, MMS, SMS, WhatsApp, or emails. It could be Facebook posts also. Intimidation, threats, blackmail around sexual favors, threats, intimidation, or retaliation against an employee who speaks up against the conduct. So these will squarely fall in the category of sexual harassment. Unwelcome social invitation with sexual overtones, commonly understood as flirting. Unwelcome sexual advances which may or may not be accompanied by promises or threats, or explicit or implicit. Physical contact such as touching or pinching, caressing, kissing, or fondling someone against her will could be considered as an assault as well. Invasion to personal space, that is getting too close to a person at a workstation. You are just leaping on her to tell her something on her computer or laptop. Persistently asking someone out despite being turned down. You keep asking someone, let's go out for a coffee or tea after the office hours, let's have a Sunday lunch or dinner together. Continuously, persistently, despite the fact that the person has been turning down your request frequently, that will fall in the category of sexual harassment. Under the law, she can report that to ICC. Stalking an individual on face of it is a sexual harassment. Abuse of authority or power to threaten a person's job or undermine her performance against her wishes. Right. These were the things I discussed now. They were on face of it squarely falling under the category of sexual harassment. Now I am discussing something which is not very obvious, indirect, and indicate underlying workplace sexual harassment. And merit for inquiry, when I'm saying merit for inquiry, if this kind of instances which I am going to discuss now are reported to ICC, the ICC will have to take note as a case of sexual harassment. So first is criticizing, insulting, blaming, reprimanding, or condemning an employee in a public. Exclusion from group activities or assignment without any valid reason. You can exclude a person depending on some solid grounds if she is not performing, but excluding her from some important activity which is part of her appointment profile and she is doing a fairly good job, despite that you keep her aside because she did not agree for the sexual favors which you requested, and you sideline her without any valid reason, that will fall under the category of sexual harassment. Statements damaging person's reputation or career, removing areas of responsibility unjustifiably, inappropriately giving too little or too much work, constantly overruling authority without just cause, unjustifiably monitoring everything that is done. You see, these category on face of it, you'll not find them as a sexual harassment. Why these things are considered sexual harassment? Reason being, the background of these situations created for her could be because you were asking for sexual favors, she refused for it. So indirectly, you are creating an environment in which she cannot grow, she cannot survive, and she is mentally taxed throughout. Blaming an individual constantly for errors without just cause, repeatedly singling out an employee by assigning her with demeaning and belittling jobs that are not part of her regular duties. At a managerial level position, you directly, indirectly make her photocopy things. Just make her run around. Why don't you go instead of calling up and why don't you go and pick up the files? Something we on your face of it, you are trying to demean her publicly. Insults or humiliation, repeated attempts to exclude or isolate a person, systematically interfering with normal work conditions, sabotaging places or instruments of work, humiliating a person in front of colleagues, engaging in smear campaigns. If you are regular basis, you are doing it. One single incident, depending upon what were the ramification, ICC member will have to decide. But generally, these kind of incidents are repeated ones, and that can be easily established that this is basically sexual harassment. Arbitrarily arbitrarily taking disciplinary actions against an employee, that is to demeanor, controlling the person by withholding resources, time, budget, autonomy, training necessary to succeed. She's planning an event, and for that she needs a fund from the office, and everything is in place, whatever is the requirement of our office. Despite that, you sitting as a boss refuse to sanction that petty amount just to ensure that she is not able to prove herself, and indirectly putting pressure on her to do what you want her to do. That will be considered sexual harassment. So these were certain incidents. On face of it, a list was of incidents on face of it which shows that was sexual harassment, and some underlying behavior which on face of it doesn't sound or look like a sexual harassment, but the reason a person is cornered is because of her sexual orientations. So what this table says, basically, if you're complimenting a female colleague and she feels good, that's okay. If she is uncomfortable when you're commenting on her looks, clothes, the way she has tied her hair, the way she looks, and she makes it very obvious, if not in words, by her gestures, that is unwelcome behavior, and you should stop at the first instance. Otherwise, if you'll keep repeating this, that will fall under the category of sexual harassment. Reciprocal behavior at one-sided. You are appreciating it, she is taking it, she's in a comfortable, friendly position with you, other than her professional relationship with you. That's absolutely okay. So please understand what I'm trying to, a point I'm trying to make. This law is more focused on the perspective of woman. Not the man thinks, okay, I just commented, that's okay. Why she's behaving like this? Why she's feeling offended? You have to understand her perspective. What I talked initially is sensitize. And you should understand, be sensitive, and we need to sensitize employees how to every person is different. We come from different location, different groomings. It's not necessary a girl will react the same way who's coming from a small town background to NCR will react in the same way the person who's born brought up in NCR will be reacting to a comment or a compliment. So it's all about the aggrieved woman's perspective and not about the perspective of a person who's making these comments. Right, so I have given these categories which you can see on your screen. Certain behaviors are welcome behaviors and certain behaviors are unwelcome. So how you'll know this behavior is welcome or unwelcome, you have to see it from the perspective of the woman with whom you are dealing with. Okay, now we are talking about harassment. I'll just move on, this is not required. Undoubtedly, physical contact or advances would constitute sexual harassment provided such physical contact is part of sexually determined behavior. Such physical contact must be in the context of behavior which is sexually oriented and not purely complementary. Now, after discussing all these instances, what is sexual harassment, what all things may fall in the category of sexual harassment, we can broadly divide these two things, direct and indirect instances, into two categories. Quid pro quo, that is literally something in return. You extend this sexual favor to me, I'll promote you, I'll give you increment, I'll give you a designation, I'll give you a transfer of your choice. This is what? Give and take. You do this favor, I'll do this favor to you. Promises, preferential treatment, detrimental treatment. If you don't do this, I'll ensure you don't get an increment. Your promotion is withheld. These kind of threats, direct or indirect. Then other category of sexual harassment can be broadly put hostile work environment, which we have discussed in underlying behavior, creating hostile, intimidating, offensive work environment, shouting at her in the middle of a boardroom, shouting in front of other employees, unnecessarily trying to demean her, stopping her small workshop related budgets or any project related budgets. So you are creating an environment in which she is not able to perform up to her optimal level, and that in turn will not only impact her mentally but will affect her future growth. And if you corner her so much, create a hostile and work environment, she may be forced to leave the place and look for another work opportunity despite doing so well in the organization she is working presently. So humiliating treatment likely to affect health and safety. So these are two broad categories. Now let's see, as I told you, let's see some examples. We have already seen certain category of work situations which fall in the category of sexual harassment. Now see with the help of some practical examples. Here, this is an example of a person who's working as a team leader, which is a common thing, a common terminology in a corporate world. And she had to stay back one day for some urgent work, and her colleague drops her back. And then he asked her to stay back, want to spend night with her, or wants to have dinner with her. Whatever he offers, she refuses politely but firmly. Then this one incident should be good enough for him to stop. If he continues asking her out on one pretext or other, that will be sexual harassment. And as you can see at the bottom three lines, next, the example says, after Kamni's refusal, he threatens her that if she doesn't give in, he will tell everyone that she made a pass at him. So you try to ruin her reputation because she did not agree to what you wanted. This is sexual harassment incident. Then in this example of Renuka is of domestic servant, domestic help, which all of us have domestic help. As a working person, we can't survive without domestic help. If a female of the house leaves house early and at home remains her husband, some elderly man, a man alone, and he keeps surrounding her wherever she's working, he keeps following her, misbehaves, touches her in an inappropriate manner, that is part of sexual harassment. And she, from an unorganized sector, obviously she will not have ICC like all of us have at our workplace. So where she can report to local complaint committee that is established by district collectors in every district. I'll come to that in detail. What is the process of setting up ICC? Who all should be the members? Right. So even a domestic help can complain of sexual harassment. Now another case of a lawyer. She visits her, she's working with an NGO for some workshop, some opportunity. She is out of town for 2 days, staying there, and the other person tries to force himself on her. This could be his her boss, colleague, anyone who is employed in the same NGO, and she opposes it. That is considered as a sexual harassment. Another good example of Jayanti, who works in a garment factory. If her supervisor keeps coming to us to pet her too much, he tries to adjust her dupatta when she's sewing the things, any kind of physical advances, he tries to touch her inappropriately. That is sexual harassment. This is very good example when I initially said even a daily wagerer working at a construction site is covered under it. Sukhi's example is there. She has a young child. She is trying to feed a child during her breaks, and a supervisor or other employees stand at a distance, keep staring at her, makes her uncomfortable, and this is happening on the regular basis when she is feeding her baby. This is sexual harassment. Look, maybe the person is not making any comments directly, or they are standing at such a distance that she can't hear what they are talking, but still they are in this situation, staring someone is good enough to fall in the category of sexual harassment. I have given a mixed example where you can see a NGO worker, office scenario, proper office scenario wherein ICC can be conducted, and this is unorganized sector, a laborer. How all these incidents fall in the category of sexual harassment. This is very nice example of Sumedha, a captain in the army. A senior tries to have sexual favors from her. When she refuses, he spreads the word that she is a woman of easy virtue. And then after, her reputation is ruined, and every now and then seniors or colleagues started approaching her. This is, and in the end, as per this example, when she turns around and protests, she is singled out for additional physical training, or maybe she's not sent for a training, whatever the situation is. This kind of behavior will also fall in the category of sexual harassment. There can be n number of examples of organized, unorganized sector where you are directly and indirectly pushing a female to the corner, sexual reasons, and ensuring that if she doesn't give you a sexual favor, you hamper her work environment, corner her in such a manner that she is not able to perform. When so much of mental pressure is put, which we discussed in underlying behavior, that her performance is adversely affected. Mentally, she's keeping down, her morale is down, she's not able to perform up to the optimal level. All this behavior will fall in the category of sexual harassment. After discussing in detail with the help of various examples and what is being laid down in the legislation, let's move on. This we have discussed while defining what is sexual harassment, who's aggrieved woman, and what is workplace. Now let's move on to redressal mechanism. What is this ICC is all about as per the Act, and what is the dictate under the Act for ICC? So ICC, the full form is Internal Complaints Committee. So in every organization which has 10 plus members, there should be ICC. It is mandatory as per the law. And any unorganized sector people can report to any sexual harassment related complaint to LC, that is local committee constituted by district collector, that is IS officer in that particular area and locality. He is duty bound under the law to constitute a LC, local complaint committee. Every aggrieved woman can approach its IC, internal complaint committee, or if you are unorganized sector, you can approach LC. If the complaint is against the chairman or top boss of the establishment, LC to be approached. Supposingly you are in an organization where ICC is conducted and your reporting boss is the CEO, COO, and when you want to make a sexual harassment complaint, the ICC refuse to take or sit on it. What is the way out for you? Despite having ICC in your organization, no one is addressing your issue. You can approach the LC, local complaint committee. Other than that, the very good thing about this act is there are provision, thanks to Ministry of Women and Child Development. We have they have a official website which I'll discuss with you, shebox, shebox.nic.in. If your ICC is sitting over a complaint, they refuse to entertain it. And even if there can be situation where even LC is because of some reason not able to address your complaint, or because of some political or social pressures are not addressing your complaint, then what is the way out? You can go on an official website of the ministry on shebox, and online you can report the incident. It is the duty of the ministry. Ministry will get in touch with your employer and look into the matter and ensure that your complaint is taken up properly. Right? So this is what internal complaint committee are all about. When I'm saying more than 10 members, you need to have mandatorily IC. Who should be the member? Two things to be remembered about ICC is, first and foremost, the presiding officer always has to be woman. The number of ICC members should be always odd, 3 or 5 or more if required. Why the number should be odd? Because there should not be a situation where final order should come 2 in favor, 2 in against. So always there has to be odd number so that there is a balance when the order comes out. Then other than a woman presiding officer, there has to be 2 members from the employees. It can be male or female. There should always be in the ICC one social worker or any person with a legal experience. It can be your panel lawyer as well. Anyone who's working in this area of women empowerment, any NGO worker in your locality can be taken on board as ICC member, as an independent member, or any person who's familiar with women issue. It can be any academic also who's done a lot of research in that area. Right? So the balance in the act should be created in favor of women. And it may sound a bit biased to male counterparts that why woman predominance should be there in ICC. I tell you the reason why woman predominance should be there in ICC. The major reason is when you're talking about sexual harassment, and we are not living in any Western country where the culture is very different. Living in India, it is very important that you give a conducive environment to a person who's reporting for sexual harassment. As a female, whatever she has gone through, she may not be comfortable communicating what she has gone through in front of male counterparts in comparison to female counterparts. So that thing has been kept in mind while drafting the legislation, and the parliament has ensured that there is a balance and there should be women members, so whosoever is reporting for sexual harassment is comfortable to discuss the incident. If we talk about higher educational institution, like we are one of the educational institution, there should be one chairperson in ICC, a senior woman faculty member should be there, 2 faculty members, 2 non-teaching employee, preferably who are committed to the cause. If the complaint comes from student, then 3 students if the matter pertains to students, and any member, the way it should be in any other ICC, from NGO or anyone who's having a law background. Right, so this is how the ICC should be constituted. For organized sector, more than 10 employees, you must have ICC in your workplace. If less than 10 members, the person can report to LC, whatever local complaint committee established by the district collector. Now I straight away come to local complaint committee. Example here gives you 5 members, 1 chairperson. Anyone is saying something? A chairperson who should be woman, a woman member from municipality, 2 members from NGO, social welfare officer or ex officio officer should be there. So this is how the local complaint committee or internal complaint committee should be constituted. If we talk about the tenure is of 3 years for each member. After 3 years, you cannot continue as a ICC or LC member. And in certain situations, you can be asked to leave the ICC in case you have or any of this, you fall in any of this category, which is you can see on your screen, contravenes the provisions regarding maintaining confidentiality. If you could not maintain the confidentiality of the case reported to you as an ICC member, then you can be asked to leave before 3 years completion. Convicted for any offense or inquiry which is pending for any offense under any law enforcement, has been found guilty under disciplinary proceedings, has abused his position in office so as to his continuation in the office is prejudicial and public interest. So any of the offense you have done under any law, any disciplinary committee for any reason, you are not able to maintain confidentiality, you may be asked to leave the committee prior to completion of your tenure of 3 years. Now, what are the duties of internal complaint committee members? First and foremost, quarterly, try and meet quarterly so you can review what is the work environment. Have you received any complaints? Whether you notice something and someone needs to be issued warning letter, so there should be quarterly meetings to discuss about awareness level in the organization, to take care of rumors in office if any, to check and update the POSH related policy of your organization, conduct the inquiry of any sexual harassment complaint you received as a ICC committee or LC, and prepare and assist management to submit annual report. Why it is important, why we are having this workshop? Because it is mandatory under law for any institution to submit annual report, whether they sensitize their employees about POSH or not. That is mandatory. And if you don't follow this, there are consequences as an employer you face. So if you don't conduct ICC or you are not able to follow the time frame, the work, you have a lot of cases reported and you are not able to take action, you are not able to submit report. First time you may face 50,000 fine as per law. Second time, if it is repeated at the employer end, there can be doubling of the fine, and third time even your license can be cancelled. So you face as an employer dire consequences if you don't follow the dictate of the act to establish and ensure that the ICC is functioning properly. Right, what you see now on your screen is how to file a complaint. Generally, complaints are filed when you're filing a complaint, there has to be 6 copies. Who can make the complaint? Aggrieved woman may make a complaint of sexual harassment in writing or to either LC or IC. And if aggrieved woman is somehow because of physical, mental, traumatic reasons not able to report it, then anyone she authorizes who is not even the employee, maybe her family member, the person can file a complaint on her behalf. And important thing is the complaint should be made within 3 months of the incident. If there are repeated incident, the limitation period of 3 months to be calculated from the last incident. Maybe someone is misbehaving and you're tolerating for good 2 months. So if there are 7 incidents in 2 months and you want to report, for you 3 months will start from the last incident which took place. So within 3 months you have to report the incidents, and in exceptional situation, because of certain reason the person is not able to report within 3 months, it is absolutely discretion of ICC to entertain the complaint even after 3 months on justifiable reasons. If the person who delayed it beyond 3 months is able to justify why there is a delay, ICC or LC is authorized to entertain beyond 3 months as well. This was a shebox.nic.in which I talked about. If your ICC is not hearing, sitting on your complaint, you can go and lodge your complaint online on this Government of India website. This is how shebox looks. It is Ministry of Women and Child Development, Government of India website. You can see on the screen, register your complaint, status of your complaint. Once you file a complaint here, the ministry will get in touch with your employer and see to it what they are doing and direct them to follow the dictates of law. So this is also for everyone's convenience. I have just put these slides here so you know what all you are supposed to fill. You have to fill all the details and the incident as well. Now, when I have discussed all these things, how you can report, which body looks into the things. Now let's see what should be the content of the complaint and what is the duration during which the complaint should be disposed of. So as I already told, complaint should have minimum 6 copies. Reason is generally 5-member committee of ICC is formed and 6 copies for records to be shared with the respondent. So name, date, time, work relationship, and description of incident or incidents. If there are more than one incident, you have to write all. Rights and of the complainant and respondent. What is the right of a complainant who has faced and reported sexual harassment? She has an option to settle through conciliation if she wants at all. So at the first hearing, ICC need to look into the matter. If ICC thinks it's okay, then ICC may ask her, would you like to go for conciliation, sit face to face and discuss the issue and sort out? And if she's okay, then ICC can request the conciliator, appoint a conciliator and send the matter for conciliation. Otherwise, if she refuses, as a ICC member, you cannot force her. So one right of hers is she can settle if she wants through conciliation. She may ask for interim measures. She may ask for assistance for filing police complaint. Please understand, this is civil domain of law, ICC complaint. If she thinks other than ICC, she would like also to report to police, lodge an FIR, she is well within her rights under the Act. So to put it in simpler terms, the ICC proceeding as well as FIR can go hand in hand, side by side. If FIR is lodged, there is no mandate in the law that the proceeding should be stayed or otherwise. If the proceedings are there, you cannot lodge an FIR. There is nothing like that. Both the proceedings can go simultaneously. She deserves a ethic hearing and she has a right to appeal as per whatever service rules are applicable to her. And if she is going to report for appeal in a court, no judge below metropolitan level can look into this. Then respondents' right, a patient and non-biased hearing. This is very important. What are the rights of male counterpart? They have a right to natural justice. They should be given a fair hearing. The respondent cannot be forced to settle in any but way by giving monetary compensation or anything until unless he himself is okay with conciliation method. He can refuse for conciliation, and he too under service rules have a right to appeal. So the law has maintained a balance, and right to appeal and right to refuse for conciliation and settlement and right to have a natural justice principle and non-biased hearings are all granted to the respondent or a alleged perpetrator. Interim measures. So what interim measures during ICC can be asked for? A female employee who reports for sexual harassment, she may ask for her transfer or respondent's transfer. She may ask for 3 months leave. Mind you, this 3 months leave is what? That is beyond the leave she is given under her service rules. So this leave will depend on the employer in which category they are putting these leaves, but these leaves are beyond the leave she is officially eligible for. She can request for restraining respondent to supervise her work or write her appraisal. And committee may recommend any or all of the above measures to management to prevent ongoing harassment. So during the tenure, yes, anyone wants to ask anything? Should I continue? Please let me know.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Right, so she can ask for any of these interim measures. Why I'm saying interim measures? Because these measures can be taken during the pendency of the ICC, when the proceedings are going on. And inquiry report, after inquiry, if the allegations are found to be proved, the report is to be submitted to employer within 10 days of completion of inquiry. To take action under service rules for misconduct, there can be an order in which sexual harassment is proved. So the ICC is authorized under service rules which are applicable to their organization to take action for misconduct, may deduct a sum to be paid to aggrieved woman from her salary. For respondent, there could be medical reasons she must have spent because of mental stress some amount of money visiting a psychologist, psychiatrist. So that compensation can be granted in an order to her. Amount to be paid to aggrieved women depends on her mental pain, suffering, loss of career opportunity, medical expenses, income and financial status of the, depending upon the income and financial status of the employee, and amount to be paid either lump sum or in installment. ICC in its order can make provision that this much amount will be cut from the perpetrator's amount whose act of sexual harassment is being proved from regularly from his salary, or he may be asked to make the lump sum payment. It depends on the facts and circumstances of individual cases. And what is the action that is to be taken by management? That is, once they receive the inquiry report, within the receipt of inquiry report, management within 60 days must implement the order. Now the act has provided a leverage to management that they may or may not accept all the recommendation, but if they are rejecting any recommendation, they must give proper reasoned order. Appeal can be filed, as I have already told you, as per the service rules. And once the order is there, the limitation period for filing an appeal is 90 days. Now, because we have discussed so many things, to keep it in a simpler form, I am just on your screen, you can see the time frame. So complaint can be filed within 3 months from the incident. Once the complaint is received, within 7 days, ICC must give that complaint to the respondent, and respondent within 10 days must respond to the complaint. Then inquiry proceedings must necessarily, mandatorily be finished within 90 days, that is 3 months. And once the inquiry is completed, the inquiry report should come out after completion of inquiry within 10 days. So this brings us to the deadline of 100 days. And once the inquiry report is there, and it reaches management, then management must take action within 60 days. And after that, within 90, if the management has implemented the order within 90 days, you can file an appeal as per your service rules. So the time frame is very clear. Within 100 days, the order is implemented. No organization can sleep over at all. And if you are not okay with the order, then both the parties, the perpetrator as well as a aggrieved woman, they have a right to appeal. It's not that the right to appeal is granted only to female employees. It is to the person against whom order is passed. Don'ts for the employer. It is very necessary when we are talking about ICC. Employer plays an active role in establishing ICC in the organization. ICC members should ensure not to disclose discourage employees from filing complaint, no attempts to settle the complaint. You should not force for conciliation or settlement, not to disclose about the case in the office, not to interfere with ICC. The bosses should not be managerial level people should not be interfering in the proceedings of ICC. This I have already discussed with you. What is the impact of non-compliance by the employer? First, non-compliance, 50,000 fine. Second, it may double. And third time, non-compliance to the act, your license may be cancelled. This I need not discuss in detail here. These are amendments which came post Nirbhaya, and they directly, indirectly relate to sexual harassment. And this, what you see on your screen, this is a handbook on sexual harassment of women at workplace prevention, prohibition, and redressal act. Very nicely written and very nicely depicted with very wonderfully colored pictures. You people may download it. Just Google the handbook on POSH and you find it. This is by Government of India, Ministry of Women and Child Development. And the examples I share with you, few of them were picked up from here. So this is very handy thing, and especially I'll recommend ICC members to go through it. It talks in a very simple language with good photographs, what should be done, what should not be done, and what incidents will be falling squarely in the category of sexual harassment. And this brings me to end of my presentation. But before I end, and I'll request anyone to have, if you have any questions, to share with me so I can respond. Before that, what I would like to do is run a very small 2.5 minute video. Just give me a few seconds and allow me to run that video that concludes whatever I have stated. Just give me a second. Can anyone tell me, Isha, could you please tell me, are you still able to see my PPT or?
Yeah. The last.
You can still see.
The
Okay,
PPT, the last screen which holds the
okay.
web links.
Now it stopped?
Yes.
Give me a second. Let me share the video.
Sure, ma'am.
My screen hang, just give me a second.
Sure, ma'am. In the meantime, in case anyone has any questions, please, if you could take the time to think about it so that after the video, we can ask ma'am any questions if we have in our minds.
Come on, if you want, I can share the video, the same video.
Just give me a second. I think I'll be able to.
Okay.
Actually, my screen hand, I couldn't pause it.
Ma'am, it is shared now.
Okay, great. Thanks for letting me know. Just give me a second. I'll just bring it back from the beginning. Everyone, this is 2:41 video, which is by Press Information Bureau, and wonderfully summarize what POSH is all about and what the rights and duties are under this act. I'm just running it now. Can you hear it?
Yes, ma'am.
He just put his arms around me on my shoulders and then just tried to be, I mean, he was almost over me. Then he would make sure that I leave the organization.
sexual harassment is a criminal offense is punishable with imprisonment of up to 3 years.
Every organization has to follow the law on sexual harassment of women at workplace, be it big or small, and whether it has women employees or not.
An organization has to help you lodge a complaint with the complaint committee of the organization that the harasser is working, or even lodge a police complaint against the harasser if you desire.
The evaluation of sexual harassment charge depends on how a woman sees it. What matters is what you perceived and not what the harasser says he intended.
The law mandates confidentiality. This is to prevent the identification of women, harasser, witness in the public or the media.
Did you know that you need lesser proof under the law than you need to get justice under the criminal law? In this case, you need to prove only the probability, whereas under the criminal law, the proof has to be beyond reasonable doubt.
You can make a sexual harassment complaint against an organization's employee even if you don't work there. You could be anybody, a visitor, a customer, a bystander, or a job seeker, but still be able to complain.
Did you know that the law provides prompt remedy? That's because the complaint committee has to finish the inquiry within 90 days, and the 90-day period starts from when the complaint has been lodged and not from when the incident has occurred.
Thank you, ma'am.
Presentation and discussion.
Yes, ma'am. Are there any questions from the audience? Isha, ma'am, should we proceed then?
Yes, please.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Lipika Sharma. Ma'am, you've been really helpful. It was a very insightful and detail-oriented session. I'm sure everyone is aware of the Google Sheet link that has been shared. Please make sure that you fill up that Google link sheet. I now request our Honorable Director General, Sir, Justice Bhavar Singh, to share his thoughts with us and grace the occasion.
My compliments to Dr. Lipika Sharma for such an erudite discussion. Indeed, all the academic parts of the subject have been dealt with elaborately. I would like to make reference to a very important case in this connection. To introduce the brief background of that case is that in 1980s, that is in mid-80s, the state of Punjab was in the grip of severe terrorism. The terrorist activities had alarming. The terrorists would come with guns and chain guns, enter into a very crowded market, and start firing at random. Sometimes dozens, sometimes 20, 30, 40 casualties had taken place. Considering the alarming situation, the central government passed an act known as the Prevention of Terrorism Act 1987. Under this act, was authorized to deal with any kind of situation, including to order for killing of a person whom he thinks that he was involved in anti-terrorist activities, or he was harboring terrorists, or he was supplying arms and ammunition to the terrorists. It was a very powerful act under which the Director General of Police of Punjab was given special powers. Mr. KPS Gill, Kunwar Pal Singh Gill, was appointed as the Director General Police, and all the powers under the Act, besides the power a police super cop can exercise. Very shortly, he commanded a control over these activities, some of which included kidnappings of the family members by the police of the terrorists. And when they were under police custody, the family members of the terrorists, they were dealt with nicely, good food was served to them, but they were held by the police in their custody to exert a pressure upon the terrorists to relinquish their anti-terrorism activities and come to civility. Very soon, Mr. Kunwar Pal Singh Gill acquired a very prominent position. So much so that even hardened criminals would collapse unconscious seeing his face. He was such a commanding personality with big mustaches and a Sardar fellow. One day, rather one evening, an IAS officer had arranged a dinner party in which all the senior IAS officers, senior police officers, including Kunwar Pal Singh Gill, were invited. During the party, Kunwar Pal Singh Gill rose from his chair and went to a female IAS officer, Rupon Diol Bajaz, and touched her face inappropriately. Mrs. Bajaz asked him to behave in a civilized manner, but he was intoxication, behaving well. He then slapped on her posterior, which was indeed taken in a very offensive manner by all those who were present. And Rupon Diol Bajaz then left the party. She and her husband both were the senior IAS officers. They lodged a police report. Obviously, nothing could have been done because it was a report against a super cop. Then she filed a complaint in the court of a magistrate. The magistrate treated the offense as a trivial offense, negligible offense, and dismissed the complaint. The High Court of Punjab approved of the order, and then disappointed by the two orders of the Magisterial Court and that of Punjab and Haryana High Court, Rupon Diol Bajaz moved to the Supreme Court. There, the case took a different turn, a U-turn. The Supreme Court directed the Magisterial Court to hold an inquiry and conduct the case accordingly. Magistrate then fined KPS Gill with 50,000 of rupees as a fine and convicted him and sentenced to 3 months imprisonment. The matter came to the High Court. This time, the Mrs. Bajaj refused to take the money of the fine on the basis of the statement that she was not interested in money. She was wanting the redressal of his grievance, the redressal of the mental agony and the trauma she had gone through. Ultimately, of imprisonment was converted into fine, because whether Mrs. Bajaj was or was not interested in accept, but a fine, if not accepted, then go to the coffers of the state, and it is taken to be as a government money. The Supreme Court this time was a bit liberal, Mr. KPS Gill, and instead of sentencing him to jail, Mr. Gill was let off on probation. He had to deposit the fine. And this is how the final was, that the dignity and honor of Mrs. Bajaj was restored. And in this case, a case of 7 years old girl was also referred to. And then an academic question arose. Had a modesty of woman. The offender had inappropriately touched that girl. And when academics were discussed and dealt with, then it was decided by the High Court that yes, a modesty with the woman is by birth. That was the academic point of jurisprudence, that does acquire the modesty of a woman since birth. That was a wonderful decision of the High Court of Punjab. And on the basis of this decision, KPS Gill was held to be guilty of offending the modesty of Rupon Dayal Bajaj, and the justice was done to the IAS officer, and she thereafter lived with her head high. So I'm really happy to have shared my views on this subject to apprise all the male and female workers at the workplace to that all my faculty members of the Metropolitan Education College and that of the Architecture College and the Engineering.
I think, ma'am.
Yes,
Ma'am's
I think
network
there's
was
yeah, network was unstable.
Sorry.
So let's just wait for a few seconds. Maybe sir will connect
Sir is
back.
back in the meeting. Sir is back in the meeting, ma'am.
Yes, it is good that it was towards the end of my utterances, and it has the internet these days keep on disturbing us, and the farmers have created a havoc because it is only on account of their movement, their agitation on that our internet is suffering, and ultimately people are also getting adversely affected. So thank you very much. God bless you all.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for sharing that important context for all of
Over
us
to
on this
you,
subject.
Navya ma'am.
Thank you so much, sir. You've shared a very, very important context for all of us on this subject. Thank you for sharing your pearls of wisdom with us. On that note, I would like to now request respected Director, sir, Professor Dr. Ravikant Swami, sir, to please share his thoughts with the gathering.
Thank you, Dr. Lipika. That session was quite different from our previous post sessions. In this college, we have made it a point that each year we do have a session on POSH, and we have been following this trend religiously. With that, we can close the session. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir. Thanks, everyone, for joining in. All right. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for giving me this opportunity, Dr. Jaswal, and thanks, everyone.
Thank you, ma'am.
Have a wonderful evening. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, ma'am.
Bye-bye.